Welcome everyone to the World We Want talk. Yes.
Alison, you want the mic?
Oh yeah.
There you go.
You can probably hear me, right? But I'm going to use the mic anyway, to be polite. Okay, how's that? Great. Thank you so much for coming. It really moves me to see you all here. I'm Alison Seddon. I'm from the Tunbridge Wells Climate and Nature Coalition, and I'm emceeing today. We're all here to hear Borsch's talk, Borsch Hulesch, and we'll get to that in a moment. First of all, I want to really thank the forum for hosting this. Isn't that fantastic? Please, thank you. It's really wonderful to be in a venue that's in the heart of Tunbridge Wells, and that means so much for this town. And of course, we're going to thank Borsch frequently during the evening, so thank him for coming. And also, very heartfelt thanks to the Tunbridge Wells Climate and Nature Coalition for putting on this talk. Yes, thank you. So I'll go through the logistics and how the session is going to run in a moment. But first of all, I want to ask you a question. So please, put up your hand if you have children. And maybe also put up your hand if you have children in your life whom you love and care about. Absolutely. We are all connected, aren't we? To life, to love, and to the future. And that's why we're here. Now, I do have children. I've got 2 children. They're adult-shaped now. In fact, my son is with us tonight, which is great. And I'd like to talk to you about my son a little bit, if I may. Now, he's one of those kids that loves football. When he was little, he would sort of lurk on the sidelines of any game he could find and then join in as soon as he could. When he was older, he would go to football training. And then when he was older still, I'd catch him about to leave the house and he'd say, "Oh, Mum, just going out for a kickabout, is that all right?" And of course, I would say yes. Sometimes I'd even join him. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it, when we see our children getting out and about, being in the fresh air, doing something that keeps them fit, doing something sociable that they love. So I always loved saying yes. However, one day, the 19th of July, 2022, to be precise, the temperature in the UK was 40 degrees. So on that day, when my son said to me, "Oh, Uncle Krishna's called, we're going to go and play football," I said, "No way, you can't play football today." And he said, "Mum, it will be fine, I'll take a bottle of water, we'll play in the shade." And I said, "No chance, it's too hot, it's not safe." So there was a bit of a negotiation, and in the end, his uncle came round a bit later when the sun was going down, and they set off. It was cooler, they had their water, and so I can wave them goodbye at the door. You might have thought at that moment I would have felt relieved, but I didn't. I felt a ball of fear in the pit of my stomach. I thought, how can it be that I actually tried to stop my son playing football because it's too hot outside? I kind of felt crazy. Then I thought, hang on a minute, am I overreacting? Should I have just calmed down a bit? After all, it's fine, he's not going to be hurt, the temperature's gone down. And I thought, no, absolutely, it's extraordinary, it's real, and I'd be crazy not to be worried. And this kind of maelstrom of feeling worried and feeling anxious and feeling crazy and feeling overwhelmed, the one thing I felt above all was I felt alone. Now, I don't know, sometimes maybe you turn on the TV and you see the floods in Valencia, or you know that Hollywood is burning, or maybe you went out into your garden this morning and the soil is bone dry, or maybe you feel alone too. But actually, we are all in this room part of a statistic. And that is, we are part of the 89% That is the 89% of adults in the UK who are really worried about climate change, climate catastrophe, and really want there to be stronger action about it. So yeah, we might feel worried, we might feel terrified, we might feel furious, we might feel helpless, and we might feel anxious. But the one thing we do not have to feel is alone. Okay, should we do some logistics? So, Hulesch is going to speak in a minute. He's going to speak for about an hour and 15. There'll be a break in the middle. We'll encourage you to go outside and mingle and chat to the representatives of the Tunbridge Wells Climate and Nature Coalition who'll be outside. And then after that, we'll be about 30 minutes having a Q&A. After the Q&A, I'll pop up and say goodbye again. Say goodbye to everyone, sorry. And then we can all have a drink and have a chat. So that's the shape of the day, of the evening. And I'd love to introduce Hulesch. Hulesch is, I hope I get this all right, Hulesch, because you're a great guy.
Perfect.
And I've got to cover it all. Hulesch is a scientist, he's a social scientist, he's a climate scientist. He has a specialism in climate migration. In his day job, he researches behaviour and what's the other one? Attitudes and behaviour in around healthcare.
Yes.
By night, he's a climate activist. He's chair of the British Sustainability Committee for Medical Intelligence.
Almost.
Really?
Close enough.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
That'll do.
You're very kind. And he's given talks to help people understand what's going on with climate change around this area since 2019, and he speaks for XR as well. Now, this talk we're going to hear is kind of been in process, it's been being sort of made and built and written for a little while now, but this is the first run of the kind of almost, well, the finalish version. Everything changes, right? But this is our first run out of the non-beta test. All right, so please let's put your hands together and welcome Hulesch, who's fantastic and a great guy too. Thank you, Hulesch.
Thank you. Don't know about great guy. Thank you. It's the British Healthcare Business Intelligence Association and the Sustainability Committee that I chair. It's a very small part of what I do. I apologize for showing up like this, like a business person. I'm coming out of my day job and out of a conference. In fact, I have a full-blown monkey suit for the gala dinner that we had yesterday in my suitcase in the back. But that actually made me think of something, which is what's the most likely attire that you would be willing to listen to what I say and willing to believe, understand, and act upon what I say? Is it like this? Or is it when I'm in full riot gear at a protest looking like that? So I'd like to see hands in the air. Who is likelier to listen to me like this? Be honest now, genuinely. And who's more likely to listen to me and understand me and want to take action on the basis of what you see over there? The minority. Very, very interesting. It's food for thought about assumptions, isn't it? Who is it that's speaking? So that was just a quick thought experiment. What I'd like to do is, and I usually have a clicker, but I lost one. No, that's okay, thank you. So this is a talk by Extinction Rebellion and by people in Extinction Rebellion. A fantastic team of very clever people have been working with me for almost a year to get this talk to you. It's only 50 slides. It wanted to be 100, but we recognize that it's impossible to tolerate 100 slides, so we're trying to narrow it down to 50. And it is basically an antidote to the doom and gloom that a lot of us do feel within the climate movement, and perhaps others as well. If you don't experience it yourself, as Alison said, you might be seeing it in the news. What the talk wants to do is to give you hope instead of doom and gloom, give you very tangible ideas, concepts, thoughts, and things that you can take away and do straight away from tomorrow. In fact, I promise you that you will walk out of here with up to 8 new ideas in your head. I will want to find out from you at the end, and really important thing to say is that we're collecting feedback. So there'll be a QR code on the very last slide, and I really urge you to give us 5 minutes of your time to give us provide feedback on how and what the impact has been for the talk for you. So up to 8. Maybe some of those thoughts are already formed in your mind. Maybe you only walk away with 1 or 2, but I'm almost certain that everybody will walk away with at least 1 new thought. And this talk is based on the idea that we can still have a world that is worth living in. And that is the world we want. And that also, it does hang in the balance. And this is where I really need my clicker. It predicates on the notion that everybody can do something, everyone in this room and everywhere else, and everyone can also multiply their impacts. Impact multipliers is incidentally the first concept that I'd like to take you to take away with you today. Now, what is included in the talk? I'm going to not do this animation because it annoys me. There we go. So actually, the first 4 points are the first half of the talk, so the first half an hour. What are the human needs and the planetary boundaries that are constraining those needs? How come we don't have the world that we want already? What might that world look like? And that is the bit where I have a vision and you all have a different vision for what the kind of world that you want to live in will want to look like. But I think we have a joint idea of some of the basics. We'll go through that. But instead we're heading somewhere else, not to the world we want. And that's where we're going to stop, and we'll leave it on a cliffhanger. We'll have a break at about half an hour, 10-15 minutes, have a drink, have a chat. You're welcome to, I'll come and chat to you guys at that point as well. But we want to come back to the second bit, which is, well, actually, how do we get to the world that we want? And I'm hoping you'll stay for that, because that's the important bit. So don't walk away from it. Now, I have more questions for you. Where do you sit on this normal curve, this bell curve? On the one side, we've got your climate skeptics, a small minority. On the other side, we've got climate activists, very active activists, also a small minority. And the vast majority of people sit somewhere in between, concerned citizens, neutral people who don't mind either way, and some unconcerned citizens all the way down to the other end. So if I could have show of hands, who among you feel you're in the green box of climate activists? That's quite a lot. I would venture to guess just under half or about half of the audience. What about the next layer down, concerned citizens? I guess the rest of you. Is there anybody who sits in the middle or this next layer down? 1 or 2? And anyone who feels they're a climate skeptic? 1. Great, thank you. That's great information for me to know. And we will be coming back to this later. But it's helpful to know. And as Alison's already mentioned, in the UK, but that study, I will come back to that study later. It's a global study done on a lot of people in a lot of countries. So the second concept that I'd like you to take away with you today is donut economics. So donut, just consider the planet Earth. I don't need you to read all the text that's in there, and the next slide is even more text heavy. I will talk you through the basic idea. So you've got the planet with its ecological ceiling, which is basically physics and chemistry. What is the planet able to sustain? That's our outside limit. And you've got inside the social foundation all of the things that humans, we need for what I would call the good life. If there's a shortfall, that's a shortfall to human needs, and if there's an overshoot, that's an overshoot of the planetary boundaries. Now, in the middle, there's this green, light green space, which is a safe space, safe and just space for humanity. And the point that this is making is that is feasible. It is feasible for us to meet the needs of every human being on the planet, as well as not exceed the ecological ceiling. However, where are we now and where are we heading? Again, I don't need you to read the small text, but what this slide is showing very clearly is that we have a great number of different levels of shortfall in various different human needs, from sanitation to peace and justice, political voice, housing, energy, water, food, you name it, all of the systems. Not everybody is getting what they need at a basic level. At the same time, we're already in overshoot of several of the planet's boundaries, chemical pollution, fresh water, land conversion, which is basically doublespeak for deforestation, etc., climate change, temperatures. So we're overshooting the planetary boundaries and under meeting human needs both at the same time. So we're doing something wrong, clearly. But in the world that we want, we absolutely can, and this should, we need to keep this in mind, that we can live happy and fulfilling lives. And we will be talking about how we might achieve that. I've seen a couple of dogs here tonight, which cheered me up to know, and thanks for bringing them. We can live this life, and I'm going to show you a slide of 5 different things that we need to do, and this will form the basis of the second half. So this is the teaser. These are the 5 things that we can, as a community and as individuals, do to achieve the world that we want. Number 1, we need to confront the facts. Number 2, we need to change our mindsets. Number 3, we need to change our behaviors. Number 4, we need to multiply our impacts. And number 5, we need to organize and resist. There will be a couple of slides at the very end, which I will encourage you to take a picture of, which will also include all of these things. So don't worry about that too much for now. Put this to one side. Let's talk about how we get there. So in terms of having the world we want, I have 2 key points to make here. Number 1, it is technologically possible for us to save ourselves still, and it is also socially possible to save ourselves. So this one is technology. Can anybody guess what the picture is showing? What is it? Can you see? Yes, sir.
It's a heliograph. It's a solar generator.
It's a solar generator. Yeah, it's a solar farm. It's all mirrors with an element in the middle. I don't have the technical terms for what exactly it's called, but gentlemen might tell us what it is called. Anyway, technology is either already there or almost there for us to save ourselves. And it is pretty clear from climate science that to have the sufficient change, we need global systemic change, which is not down to us individuals, but also individual action. The combination of these 2, and neither one without the other, is going to cut it. However, we do have the technological means to save ourselves, and also we have the social means. There are climate scenarios, and anybody who's ever seen these various graphs of how far climate change is going to go and temperature rise is going to go will know that there are various different scenarios, and they're all dependent on what? Or rather, who? The difference between all the climate scenarios is humans. There is no other difference. It is literally down to us to make or break the planet, and we have the ideas, and we just need to build a sustainable future. And I need to come to my check my notes for a bit. So what we need is less, basically. And they talk a lot about the energy transition. For just as an example, when you swap oil and gas for electricity, for green, renewable, clean electricity. And that's all well and good, but we know that hundreds of millions, billions of people on the planet still don't have access to this kind of energy. They're off the grid. They will require adding to the grid. So basically, the consumption is going up. And if you look at the figures for Europe, for example, you can see that the level of electricity generation by renewables is sharply increasing. However, the level of usage of fossil fuels is flat. It's not replacing. It is what it's doing, it's feeding increasing demand. So we are still not doing what we need to do. But, and this is really a message for you here in the audience tonight. You don't have to do everything yourself. You shouldn't, and you can't. So putting the burden of that responsibility on your shoulders is the wrong thing to do. Some of these solutions are individual shaped. Some of these solutions are locally shaped. Some of these solutions are national shaped, and some are globally shaped. Our job is to make the impact locally with eyes on the prize globally. Now, that's a nice little banner, isn't it? How come we don't have the world that we want? And that's because what I would call the system, and I also like to call they are preventing us from having the world we want. And the system manifests itself as unrestricted, unfettered capitalism, a vandalism of the planet, the neoliberal principle. And so when economy comes into conflict with physics, guess what wins? Economy can never win. And unrestricted growth has been demonstrated, it's so obvious, is unsustainable. What is sustainable? What's sustainability in its most simple, purest form? All it is our ability to carry on doing what we're doing for the long term into perpetuity, indefinitely. And what we're currently doing is unsustainable. We cannot do that. So, a good economy is one where there's a floor, where the sting is taken out of being poor, where success is measured in things other than GDP. If you think about success as it's been measured for an individual, it's the size of your purse, it's the size of your house, it's the size of your car, it's the size of your pension, right? The bigger it is, the bigger you are. If you think about, there's a terminology which is standard of living. What is standard of living? In its essence, it is your energy profile. The higher your energy profile, the higher your standard of living. And we need to stop measuring standard of living, we need to start measuring quality of life, also known as happiness, also known as health. We'll come back to that later. But the same thing holds true for the economy. As long as GDP, gross domestic product, is the key measure of the success of an economy, not global health, not planetary health, not human health, not community health, it's the wrong thing to measure. Now, we are trying, perhaps, to do things differently, but they are trying to stop us from doing so. They are doing a lot of things to stop us. Now, who are they? And I'm not one to point fingers, I really am not. And I don't care if somebody's rich or poor. I genuinely don't care. And I really don't care about money. But the mega rich, the mega polluters, and their enabling lobbies and their enabling media are stopping us from getting the world that we want. First, they said climate change isn't real. Remember that? Climate denialism. That's off the table now. None of them say that now. Now it's more about climate delayism. But then they said, after a while, they said, well, yes, okay, climate change exists, but we're not the cause of it, humans. That's off the table now, too. And then they said, well, sure, climate change is happening, but actually it's good for us. CO2 is plant food, right? And then they said, well, you know what? Don't worry about it. We got you. You don't have to think about it at all. Then they said, we'd like to do this, but it's actually really expensive. They pull the wool over our eyes of just how expensive it is compared to what the alternative would cost. And then they start saying, oh, it's too late now. There's nothing you can do, so you might as well not try. And this is a slippery slope. Every time we give an inch, they take a mile, and they go all the way back to the top again. So for us to have to go back and fight our way up this ladder every single time, just look at the Trump administration and what they're doing today. But because this talk is a talk about hope, I want to instill upon you that we can cancel the apocalypse, and a positive vision is actually possible. And a future with a sustainable world, it's a stable world, a safe world for all of humanity is possible. Now, I don't know about you, I am so sick and tired of feeling sad about the future. Does anybody here feel like that? I feel like that a lot. I'm tired of being ashamed of humans, of us. And I think we can do better than this. And the people in this room, just like in other rooms, we can be the source of that process. And we want to create, first of all, a vision, because it is so much easier to strive towards something if you look at it and you think, well, that's attractive, I want that. And we know that the world in the future is not going to look like the world in the past or even the world that we live in today. It will be different, but it is up to us to figure out in what way is that going to be different. And this is the talk's second half where we help us to think about that. In the meantime, I'd like to offer you a little bit of maybe common ground about what it might feel like. And I know, and I can't stress this enough, my vision of what I'd like the future to look like is going to be different from yours, and that's okay. And if we have time, perhaps in the break, you guys can have a chat about what's your vision, and I'd be really curious to hear about it too. It will be a different world. It will feel different, it will look different. The economy and the market needs to change from this machine that is extracting what is called value, but it's extracting resources from the planet and from us to be treated as an ecosystem. And humans, likewise, will need to understand and behave as if they were part of the ecosystem. They need to be a part of nature, not be apart from nature. I think in the last century or so, we have had this tendency to view nature as something that we subjugate. Nature, that's something that's there, and we are over here. And there's a barrier between us, and there's this clean, sanitized cityscapes and houses that we live in are somehow apart from nature. We have to be a part of nature, and we need to measure success in different ways through planetary health, community health, and individual health, rather than the amount of stuff that we own and consume. The future is going to have to be cleaner, is going to have to be greener. It will be more communal, less unfair, less greedy, less selfish. It will be probably, I expect, it should be simpler, easier, perhaps slower, less hurried, and it will be sustainable by design. And I'd like to offer just a little bit of vision about what I, personally, how would I like to feel and behave in the future, in the world that I want. This is my idea of a good life. Yours may be different. I will be a happier, healthier, more grounded, more centered, more communal person, more embedded, more connected. I will be a better version of me. I will have fewer worries. I will have less worries about what to do about my children, their education, how do I put food on the table. I will worry less about my bills and the cost of living. That's because I will need to make less money. I'll come back to that in a second. I will live within my physical and planetary means. I heard a talk that talked about the 1.5 degree citizen, which I really like that concept because it tells you how you personally ought to behave for the world to agree with the Paris Agreement. I already don't eat pork, beef, lamb. I will probably eat even less meat or no meat, but I will have good quality protein alternatives at a price that's affordable to me. I will buy stuff infrequently. I will have lasting stuff that I can reuse, recycle, or mend. I will travel. I will have a holiday, but I will travel locally or I will travel slowly. I already don't fly. I don't expect everybody in the room to make a commitment to never fly again after today. However, I have made this commitment a few years ago, and it's worked out for me. And I only travel to places where I can get to in an electric train or my electric car, and if I can't, I don't need to be there. And that's true both for my private life as well as my business life, and my company just needs to understand and accept that. It's a little bit of a push, but it works out. And what else? Very importantly, I'm a scout leader, and I really believe in the scouting movement in the sense that it is a self-supporting network of people. It's exchanging ideas, exchanging tools, exchanging looking after children, and it's a giving economy. And I'd like that to be true for my entire community. to be basically scouts, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, everyone. I will, or at least in my vision of the future, I will have locally owned, free or almost free energy. It's going to be renewables, whether it's wind or solar, and it's going to be owned by the local government or by a cooperative locally, and I will be a part of that. And as a result, my bills will go almost down to zero. I will be accessing locally owned electric vehicles if I want to travel somewhere, whether that's a car or a bus or a train, with a low-cost, low-carbon commute. This is the stuff, probably, that's the most expensive bit and which requires government intervention. Most of the other things I can do for myself. Your vision might be different, and there's a lot of detail that needs filling in, but what I would say is I will be a happier, more centered, more community-based, less anxious version of me. That's what I'd like. However, right now, we're far away from that world that we want. These are images, and actually Alison mentioned one of those, that are not science fiction. This is what's happening around the planet today, not just in faraway places. This is Germany 2022. That over there is the Greek wildfires 2023. This is Pakistan 2024, and that's Valencia 2024 also. I'm sure you're familiar with these images. This is what we have to look forward to, and the choice is ours, whether it's the world that we fear, a world of conflict, a world of want, a world of despair, or the world that we want. And the choice, of course, we are the cause as well as the solution to the crisis. I have a Bart Simpson quote on that one, who said, "Alcohol is the cause of and the solution to all of life's problems." While humans are the cause of and the solution to all of the planet's problems. On the current trajectory, we're not looking good. We are traveling in the wrong direction, and people who say we are making change, it is true, we are making change, we're just not making it at the pace necessary. This dangerous trajectory will only stop if we stop polluting the atmosphere with CO2 and other greenhouse gases. We need to do this rapidly, completely, and forever. Governments and businesses are doing nowhere near enough, and on current trends, societal collapse is almost certain. Would that mean the extinction of the human species? No, probably not. Would that mean hundreds of millions of billions of people suffering immeasurably and dying unnecessarily? Almost certainly yes. And there is no planet B, and that's true even for the billionaires. No one's escaping this planet, I can promise you that. And the planet is already experiencing consequences on land. The main consequences are extreme weather, so droughts, wildfires, extreme rainfall events, and the resulting floods. 2024 may have been the hottest year on record. It is also the coldest year we are likely to experience in our lives going forward. That is the situation. At sea, we don't see the sea as much, but there's so many problems going on in the sea. So we've got sea level rise, we've got sea temperature rise, eutrophication, acidification, coral reef die-outs, the bleaching, sea plastic, bottom trawling, overfishing. I'm just listing all these things, and every single one of these, I think I listed 7 things, is a major problem in itself. And that's all already happening. And the UK is no different. The UK, generally speaking, tracks with the rest of the world in terms of the climate impacts. So we now have the same amount of wildfires or more in the first 4 months of the year than we used to have in an entire year. We have hundreds of floods, hotspots. This one's in Lincolnshire, the picture that you see here. And it just keeps on getting wetter, as well as hotter, as well as, funnily enough, or ironically enough, it's both wet and dry. At the same time, we have the poorest biodiversity and the highest amount of water and air pollution in the UK we've ever had. It's not heading in the right direction. Now, in 2016, 195 nations, including the European Union, agreed the Paris Agreement. And this agreement said we recognize that 2 degrees of warming above pre-industrial average is too high, and so we must not go beyond that, and actually we should aim to get it as close as possible to 1.5. Now this last year, 2024, was the first year where we went over hit 1.5 for a single year. Their calculation is slightly different. They do it over a 10-year period, but for 1 year we have already hit the 1.5. We don't have any credible plans to keep us below 2 degrees Celsius. If we fulfill the plans that governments currently have, we're heading for 2.8, and we know how bad governments are at actually completing their plans. So potentially by the end of the century, we're looking at over 3 degrees Celsius of global temperature rise, which is a catastrophe. Our politicians tell us that 2050, net zero by 2050, right? That's the solution that they're selling us. Well, actually, that would put us at about 2.3 degrees above pre-industrial average. So what they're selling us as a solution is actually a disaster. And the problem is that these models don't factor in very well feedback loops and tipping points. So I don't know how much you know about these, but feedback loops are when something causes heating, which causes further heating, such as Arctic sea ice melt, for example. If the sea ice is melted during the summer, the water is darker, it sucks in more heat from the sun, which then generates more melting, etc. That's a feedback loop. A tipping point example would be the Amazon rainforest, which is currently still a rainforest, but we might be the last generation of people who see it in that state, because pretty soon it might tip into a savanna state. And once the tipping point is flipped, it is extremely difficult to flip it back. You can't just plant trees and expect it to become a rainforest again. It might not be a rainforest ever again, or maybe not for tens or hundreds of thousands of years. And all of these are not very well factored into climate models, which means if some of the worst scenarios happen, we might end up with runaway climate change, which means we basically lose control over the planet's climate. Here's just a few examples. They're all over the globe. So you've got the Greenland ice sheet, you've got the West Antarctic ice sheet, you've got the Amazon rainforest. Some of these kick in slightly later, so you can see the dark red ones are the most imminent ones, and then as you go down, they come in later. But of course, they're also accelerating each other. So there's no great news there. And the web of life is unraveling. We are in the 6th mass extinction event. Over 1 million species of plants and animals are at risk of extinction in the next few decades. This is where Extinction Rebellion got its name from, not from human extinction, but it's the 6th extinction event, and it is on par with the previous one where the dinosaurs died out. And it is unequivocally proven that a healthy, diverse ecosystem is not a nice to have. We cannot survive as a human species without healthy ecosystems on the planet. So what do we need to do? We know exactly what we need to do. This is not a crisis of knowledge. We've known for a long time, and we know very clearly now what it is that we need to do. We just need to buckle down and bloody well do it. Okay? And thank you. Cue for me to have a drink. Are you guys still with me, by the way? Yeah. I can't see much of you. That's the problem. Thank you. So, the 3 things we need to do collectively as the whole planet of humans, and those last 2 things are actually very connected. But number 1, we need to ditch the fossil fuel addiction. We need to stop burning stuff. Coal, oil, gas, all the forms of oil, petrochemicals, also wood. And then we need to change our food system, which essentially means reducing animal agriculture. Currently, about 80% of the calories we get as humans comes from plant agriculture, and only 20% of the calories come from animal agriculture. But 80% of the land is being used by animal agriculture, and only 20% of the land is being used by plant agriculture. Of course, a lot of plants are being planted for the animals to then eat as food crops. But if we did that, if we changed the food system, we could radically hand back land to nature, we could easily rewild half of the planet without starving. We would have to change our diets. And nobody's, by the way, nobody's saying to anyone, you need to be vegan or you need to be vegetarian, or you need to do this. But we have to change. If you think back just 100 years, meat was a treat. Once a week, maybe, and not for everyone. I'm going to play a little game with you. How many kilos of meat does the average American consume today in a year? Let's have some numbers. How many kilos of meat a year, the average American? Let me hear some numbers. Shout them out. 20, 200, anything else? 500 kilos of meat, half a ton of meat. That's over a kilo of meat a day. Well, it's not quite as bad as that, but it is but you might be surprised to learn that it is about 120 kilos of meat a year. Now, what about Britons? What's the number there? 60, 70. Now you have an anchor point with the Americans, right? You know you need to go lower. So a couple of years ago, it was about 57, and it is dramatically reducing. So just so you know, people out there who are reducing your meat eating, others are doing it too. So the average is now in the low 50s. Last question, what about India? How many kilos of meat per year, per person on average? 5 is a very good guess, it's 4. Wow. So 1.4 billion Indians are happily surviving on just 4 kilos of meat a year. It can be done. It can be done. So we could hand back space to nature, and we can even do it in cities. Can anybody recognize this city?
Singapore.
That's it. So there's a lot that can be done, and a lot of things need to be done on the government level. I don't want to go into too much detail because there's a lot here. But governments need to change the system of rewards. So they need to change the system of rewards in the energy systems, in the food systems, in the manufacturing systems, and in the ecosystems. An ecosystem reward, for example, is, are you paying to keep a tree upright, or are you paying for it to be chopped down and turned into a product? That's just an example. Governments across the globe need to subsidize, incentivize, invest in, and pay for the right kinds of practices. And they need to disincentivize, control, ban, penalize, tax the wrong sorts of behaviors. And all of this stuff may sound big, but many of them are at the stroke of a pen. I'll give you an example. This country spends about £10 billion a year on fossil fuel subsidies. That is a decision. There's no investment involved. You could take that money and stick it onto renewables like that. Just move it over. That's it. So stop subsidies of fossil fuels and start subsidizing and paying for renewables, clean energy. Public transport. Now that costs money. But you have to change. If you want people to get off roads, you need to provide an alternative. You can't just tell people not to do things. You can't tell people not to fly. I spoke to my wife's colleague. She's a medical doctor, and she was going to a conference in Edinburgh last weekend. And she said, yeah, I'm going to Heathrow now to catch my flight. I held my tongue because my wife stood next to me, and she knew what was coming. I said nothing. I could have said, I was in Barcelona this week on a train. It took me 14 hours, but I got there, and it was absolutely fine, and I got a day's work done on my way to Barcelona. In fact, I'm going to Milan and Rome next week, also on trains, and it will work out fine for me. So she's flying, but that's because it is much quicker, it is much cheaper. How expensive is it to get a train ticket to Edinburgh? You can get a flight for 30, 40 quid. And unless and until, did you know that there is no VAT, there's no tax on kerosene, on aviation fuel? They're not taxing it, but they are taxing land-based transport. That's at a stroke of a pen, but there's a lobby out there who doesn't want that to happen, just as an example. So we really need to stop investing and stop subsidizing destructive behaviors, agriculture as well, and we need to change that system. Now, I would like to ask you a question. genuine question. I have asked this many places and I got interesting answers. If we can agree that the future is fossil free, how many people, hands in the air, how many people believe that fossil fuel companies will regulate themselves out of existence or change their business models to renewables? Hands in the air, believe and genuinely believe that they're going to do this by themselves. 0 hands. I'm a little bit unsurprised. Okay, so if they won't do it, who's going to do it? Who can do it? Who's the only person that can? Yes, ma'am. Well, us, okay, yes, we'll get there in a second in one step. Who's between us and those guys? Governments. So whose government is that? Is it our government? If they're not doing it, they're not our government. They're their government. So we need, if the government has been captured, our job as individuals and communities is to recapture the government to do what we need them to do, which is what they came into power to do in the first place. Now, this is where we're going to stop. The cliffhanger I promised you. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back to talk about what is it that we can actually do. Thank you very much. Break on. The fantastic conversations I've already had during the break. And before we launch back into, well, what are we going to do about all this? I just wanted to come back to this chart for a moment because a gentleman approached me during the break and asked me a question about, well, I see and hear and watch on YouTube and hear in the neighborhood all these people on this side, all the reform people, he said, and how do I counter that, was the question. We could make this into a session in itself, but instead, I'm just going to give you the answer. You don't have to worry about them. I'll talk to you about why that is, but rest assured that as long as you're addressing these people, the next layer down, if you're a concerned citizen, the next layer down. The last set of people we need to convince is the climate skeptics and the climate deniers. I sometimes, just for fun, have a conversation with climate skeptics on the streets when I'm out on protests, just to to keep my skills fresh. But generally speaking, it's a waste of your life, it's a waste of your time, and you shouldn't do it. All you should do is always reach for the next layer down, because that is how we spread and that is how we grow. Let's go back to the original plan. Where are we? Here we are. So what can we do? What can we do? Let's talk about us. So, I don't know if you've noticed this, but rights are never freely given. It's always taken by force, taken by fight. The right to vote, the right to maternity leave, the right to a 5-day working week, the right to protests, the right to be openly gay, the right, to enter a park or sit in a specific seat on a bus. All of these rights are never given to us. And so, like all the other great social movements, the anti-apartheid movement, the Indian liberation movement, the LGBTQ movement, the women's suffrage movement, all of these movements have achieved their goals by taking and asking and demanding for what they needed. And in their days, they were all vilified as criminals, put to jail, put to death, depending on the country as well, but are currently undisputed heroes. Who would dispute today that women have the right to vote? I don't know if anybody would still do that. It's so obvious to us, but even 50 years ago, that wasn't so obvious at all, not very long ago. So it is we, the people, and today's movement is the social justice movement, the climate justice movement, is going through the same sorts of things that the movements of the past have gone through. So it is us, the people, we have the power to change the world. We've done it before. We know it can be done. It's never easy, and it takes time. The suffragettes took over 30 years, I think, and they broke quite a few windows, and they burned down quite a few houses in the process. We have been breaking some windows, but not enough, insufficient numbers of windows for now. But we need action, and we need to put pressure on politicians and corporations. And these are the things that we can do. This is a revisit of the slides that I've shown you in the beginning. We need to confront the facts, we need to change our mindsets, we need to change our behaviors, we need to multiply our impact, and we need to organize and resist. So we're going to walk through these 5 in turn. There's a lot in the mindset section. That is the biggest section. Confronting the facts, this is the easy bit. This is basically saying you need to stop doom scrolling, you need to start reading quality stuff, quality materials, journals, articles, be a citizen climate scientist, be aware of local issues, be aware of global issues. A well-informed electorate is a powerful electorate. The 21st century, it feels like it's being geared towards stopping us from thinking. You know, the smartphone in my pocket gives me any amount of distraction that I want 24 hours a day. So we need to force ourselves to give space in our heads to think and consider and confront the facts. Now, I would like to ask how many Game of Thrones fans in the audience here tonight? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a fair few. This is a quote from Game of Thrones, from a guy called Ned Stark. "When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives." And I really like Game of Thrones for a number of reasons, but this is what really inspires me, because it has us think about what that pack is. Our ancestors, they really understood this concept that the survival of the individual depends on the survival of the tribe. And it doesn't work. You can't be selfish. It has to be on a tribe level. Now, the question then is, how do we define our pack? Who is our pack? And because carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases don't know how to stay in one country or another, our pack is now global. There's no other way to describe it. Everybody, we're all in this together, as I mentioned, also the billionaires. That's one way to define the pack. The other way to define the pack is super local. So it's the people you see here today around yourselves, your family, your friends, and the like-minded fellow human beings in your vicinity are your pack. And so we need to stick together on both levels. Now, I come to the concept which some of you guys have seen earlier versions of this talk will recognize. This is the trickiest one. And I'm going to spend probably at least 5 minutes just trying to explain myself out of this situation. This is about mindset shift still. So humans have evolved, as we have said, on a tribal level, on a local, small scale. We are good at 2 things, and we're very bad at 2 things. The 2 things we're good at. We're very good at empathizing with people and things that are local to us physically or in time. If I see a child fall over on the street, I pick them up, I dust them off, I say, there. I can feel empathy for that child in that moment. If I see someone with a visual impairment who wants to cross the road, of course I'm going to help them cross the road, and anybody would do that. So I can feel empathy for things that are close to me physically or in time. I'm also good at perceiving threat. Somebody attacks me with a knife, you know that feeling, don't you? Can you feel that in your, it's a gut, it's a visceral feeling. And I feel that. If a saber-toothed tiger should walk across the street from me, I know exactly what I need to do. If a volcanic eruption happened next to me, I would know that I need to run and escape very clearly. But we're bad at 2 things. Well, number 1, we're bad at empathizing with things and people that are removed from us by either distance or time. So if there's a flood in Indonesia, I can intellectually understand that that's a problem for people in Indonesia. But I don't feel the same set of visceral feelings that I feel when I'm being attacked at knife point, right? I just don't. I intellectually understand it, don't feel it. And I also don't understand the threat that is removed from me physically or by time. I cannot empathize with the threat that I will be under in 20 years' time. I don't even know what I will feel like. How can I empathize with the rest of the planet? So we're good at threat analysis and empathy locally and in close proximity in time, and we're bad at doing the same thing on a global scale and in long scales of time. We're bad at it, but we really must get good at it. We need to develop this new power of understanding what's going on around us in long distance time and long distance in terms of space. And I have an analogy for you. And this is the analogy of the heart surgeon. So when I'm the heart surgeon, if the heart surgeon is conducting surgery on a young patient, a child, that heart surgeon what is he or she doing? They are manipulating a piece of tissue. It's a highly technical, very precise, very important, but they're literally just manipulating tissue in that moment. What they're not doing is they're not empathizing with the feelings of that child on the surgical table. They're also not empathizing with the parents who are freaked out in the waiting room. And they're also not in connection with their own feelings because they're focused on a task. Once the task is done, the child is happily survived, then they can get in touch with their feelings, feel happy for the child, for the parent, and feel happy for themselves for having done a great job. And they are fundamentally in this job because they care. They really do care. But in that moment, they don't. They're focused on a job of manipulating tissue. And for us in the climate movement, it's exactly the same job. If I had to empathize with everybody around the planet, every living creature, every human, all the time, or if I had to worry about climate risks 20, 30 years into the future all the time, I would be paralyzed to act. I wouldn't be able to do anything. I'd just sit there and cry. And a lot of people I see in the climate movement are burnt out for this reason. And climate activists who do it right are able to take that care and set it to one side in order to be able to take action. That is the task. Is this making sense? Mm-hmm. Hooray. Great. Next one then. If you ask a person at the end of their lives, well, what would you rather have? More health or more wealth? What would they tell you? Obviously, they would like to live a little longer, spend a little more time with the young ones, and they would not care the least bit about extra money. So we just need to take that insight, that wisdom, and transport it backwards in time to apply it much sooner. We need to value health, planetary health, community health, individual health, and we need to aspire to different things. We must not aspire to the lifestyle of mega consumers. I have this terrible example. One of my boys, my youngest boy, is an Alan Walker fan. Is anybody in the audience familiar with Alan Walker? He's a DJ. He's a DJ, he's a young guy in his 20s. A lot of kids his age love him. Now, I took my son to an Alan Walker concert, which whole another story, but anyway, he's 11. We had to leave. We had to go home. It was too loud for him, obviously. But we didn't know that at the time. And they also didn't want to let him in because it was 16 and over. But a story for another day. But I had to. I looked up Alan Walker before we went to the concert because I wanted to know a little bit more about him, just for the sake of my son. And I read on his Wikipedia entry that he was a very young prodigy and he made it big very early on and made a lot of money. So he bought himself an Audi A8. And then the next year he bought himself a Ferrari. And then the next year he bought himself a Lamborghini. And the children of my son's age 11, aspire to be this guy. And it just breaks my heart. It is the wrong thing to aspire to. We need to aspire to something. And we're not saying have a lesser quality of life. We're actually saying have a better quality of life, just not achieved by owning and consuming stuff. So we need to change the way we keep score from standard of living, which is energy profile, to quality of life, which translates to happiness. We need to aspire to different things. The good news is, and I was having a conversation with someone during the break about how do we precipitate change. The good news is that just like there are climate tipping points, there are also social tipping points, and we've seen a number of these over the history of our species. And social science tells us that roughly 20 to 30% of society is sufficient to change a major, to create a major change to occur. And examples include, for example, the desegregation of schools in America, or how smoking habits changed over the last 20 years, the spread of the car, the spread of the internet, the spread of the smartphone. All of these changes were very rapid, almost immediate when you look at it from a bird's eye perspective. Other similar tipping points are coming, such as the electric car and the electrification of the grid. It's not coming fast enough, but it is coming. So when we talk about impact multipliers, we really need to bear in mind that everything we do builds towards this 20 to 30%. And so important to mention that we are the majority. Alison alluded to this study.
You're going to set me straight, aren't you?
No, not particularly, unless you want me to.
No, it's all good. I'll ask your wisdom, for sure.
So the study was done in 125 different countries with over 130,000 people, and is globally representative. But it's the study after study show that there's a global majority who recognize the climate emergency and who demand urgent, intensive action. Now, the 89% varies by country, but there's no country where it isn't the majority. Even in the US, it's something like 70%. And it's interesting how I've heard arguments to say that people in the global south, they don't care about climate change because they're busy surviving. Well, actually, they care more about climate change than any of us here because they're busy surviving it. And they're already at the front line. So just when you think about these, the reform types, the noise may be more on that side, but the silent majority is us in this room. So the question is, what can we do? How can we get to these social tipping points faster? And there's a couple of things we can do. Number one, climate science talks about mitigation and adaptation. We shall wait. Thank you. I should have said. Also, no fire alarms have been planned for the day. And the fire exits are right there. So, with changing behaviors, there's two types, mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation is trying to slow down or stop climate change from happening. So, solar panels on the roof is a mitigation step, for example. And then adaptation is recognizing that climate change is occurring, has occurred, or will have occurred, and to adapt to that new reality. That's on the next slide. So for now, changing behaviors. Now, we're not suggesting that you have to change all of your behaviors or that you have to do it all now. Also, some of these behaviors are bound to money. Not everybody can afford the solar panels on the roof or the electric car in the garage or to go to a heat pump. Government has a job to do there because they are already subsidizing heat pumps. They need to make sure that people who can afford, even without the subsidy, can get it. But here are some of the examples. And some people in XR, Extinction Rebellion, really hate me for this slide. Because we say that we're not blaming any individual. And individual action is a trap that is set up by global corporations that tell us that we are, it's our fault, so we should change our ways. And I hear that, I understand that. However, I've been delivering talks like this for the last 6 years, and every single time I do that, the end of the talk becomes the question, okay, I understand there's an emergency, I understand it's critical, I understand it's terrifying, what do I do? So I've come to the conclusion that I want people to be able to make that choice for themselves, to do things in their own lives. And so, stopping burning stuff, whatever it is that you're burning, try not to do that. Reducing or stopping flying altogether. Some people can do it, other people can reduce it. Retrofitting your home, if you can afford it, do that. Eliminate fossil fuel from everything that you do. Reduce your meat consumption. I'm not saying never have a steak. I'm just saying make that a treat. You can review all of your consumer choices. This is super important. Everything you buy or don't buy, if you don't buy something because of an environmental reason, let them know. Tell them why you didn't buy it. You can bank sustainably. You can have a sustainable pension. Changing your pension to the right one is one of the simplest, quickest, cheapest, it costs you nothing, and most effective ways that you can mitigate climate change. It's huge. Switching to a sustainable pension, you could do it today. And in brackets, by being born, you're going to have a carbon footprint, right? It's impossible not to have a carbon footprint. People are internal combustion engines. We emit CO2, right? Just by existing, by eating. So you'll always have what I would call a residual footprint. And any residual footprint, you can carbon offset. There are good carbon offsets and bad carbon offsets. We're not going to get into that tonight, but please ask me if you want to. Just one point on carbon offsets. It is not a tool to carry on with business as usual. So it's not about, I'm just going to fly just as I used to, and I'm going to offset my emissions, and therefore I'll be guilt-free. No, it's carbon offsets are on your way to net zero, on your way to becoming a 1.5 degree citizen, and anything that you cannot offset, you cannot eliminate, avoid, that's where your carbon offsets come in. Next thing is we talked about mitigation, now we talk about adaptation. So we need to adapt. We need to become resilient to the future, because the future will be different, and there's a lot of stuff that's already baked into the system that we cannot get rid of, so we need to get ready for. And COVID was such a good reminder of that, because if you'll remember, all of a sudden, even though there was no supply chain shortage, there was nothing to worry about, the shelves were suddenly empty. All the key stuff, flour, rice, potatoes, pasta, toilet paper, all the key things that are required for everybody were suddenly off the shelves. They were gone for weeks. Did you know that the European Union now recommends every EU citizen to stockpile food on top of what they would normally buy for 3 days? My recommendation is 3 weeks. I have a little Noah's Ark hidden away in the back of my shed with 3 weeks worth of food. I hope I never have to use it. I hope it's just going to rot there quietly forever and ever. But it's in there, because even if it's just the next case of COVID, I know I've got something to fall back on. Some of my colleagues really don't like me talking about go bags. Does anybody know what a go bag is? Yeah? Okay, would you like to explain what a go bag is?
It's what you might need to survive for 2 or 3 days if you have to leave your home in a real rush.
In a hurry,
Emergency.
exactly that. It costs about 100 quid to have one for a family of 4 for 4 days. I've had one for like 6 years, never touched it. And I hope I never do, but it's there. It's part of my resilience plan. A bit of stockpiled food, a bit of a go bag. I also have an underground cistern for water. I have solar panels. I'm building up my resilience gradually, slowly. I'm privileged, I have a garden. I'm planting potatoes now. I didn't used to plant potatoes because they're a boring crop, and I can buy them. But what if I can't buy them? How great would it be to have 2 bags of potatoes, 100 kg of potatoes, sat in my garage or my shed, just in case? And it's probably flavorful potatoes, so I'm going to eat them. But it is part of my resilience plan. Community gardening, guerrilla gardening, allotments, anything. You can grow quite a lot of stuff in just a raised bed, even if you don't have a garden. And so I would say that relying less on global food chains, relying less on long supply chains generally, is good. And investing in our community, making friends, you guys need to hang together and figure out how you would be resilient. What would you do if your way of life had to change? What would you do if it just changed for a couple of weeks? If we didn't have running water and electricity for 2 weeks, are you resilient to withstand that kind of thing? One of the people that worked on this talk had exactly that happen. She's up in Scotland, and there was a power outage for two days, and it tested her abilities to, for her resilience. Funnily enough, a couple of weeks later, that was a storm. A couple of weeks later, there was a wildfire in one of the other guys who's working on this talk in his garden. He had 2 fire brigades come out, 10 people putting out the fire in his garden. That was a wildfire because it was so dry. So we need to be resilient to all of these things. And I think the most important thing is to have a lot of friends locally. When trouble strikes, it's your neighbor is your best resource. So do we have time to do a quick exercise? Do you guys want to do something for 3 minutes? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I would like to tell your neighbor one aspect of your local community life that you would like to see improved, that you could actually have an impact on. Go. Feel like that was enough time? I would like to invite a couple of people to share just one idea that you've had that you've been talking about. Sir?
Bring back the village pub.
Bring back the village pub. Fantastic. Why? Because of social resilience. Because of social cohesion. However, if you did that, you guys would have to promise to go there. Yeah. Otherwise it wouldn't work. Anything else? Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. More electric buses.
Going round locally.
100%. And ma'am, behind you.
To have a whole street of solar panels and the whole street shares the power that comes.
Community power. It's one of the greatest things we can do to eliminate great big multinationals from our lives. Thank you. Yes, one last one.
Better education about gardening, like for young people and things, and just understanding what can be grown. I know YouTube has got loads of courses, but maybe in the village pub, then they can do sessions about how to do it.
It's hands-on. YouTube is great, but if you start digging the earth yourself, you get a feel for it. It's a whole different thing, absolutely. So teaching people about how to do gardening would be a wonderful thing. Thank you very much for that. Go and do that. Make that happen. And on that note, I'm going to talk about impact multipliers. So when I think about my own life, my family, my house, my travels, everything that I do, I would consider that an impact of 1. Everything I do outside of that circle, such as me talking to you guys here tonight, that's one of my impact multipliers. If I manage to convince one of my colleagues to take a train with me to a client meeting rather than fly, that's an impact multiplier. And everybody has impact multipliers. In fact, I would like to challenge you, if you feel you don't have one, to come up to me at the end, and I will spend 30 seconds and I will figure out what your impact multiplier is, I promise you. Everyone has them, you do too, so discover them and use them. Even if you're not perfect yet. I'd like you, I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to try you on a mantra. Are you guys ready for a mantra? Mm-hmm. Okay, it's really simple. It goes, action before perfection.
Action before perfection.
Focus on that. You don't have to be perfect, and when I go out on a climate protest, I often get asked by people who want to pick a hole. Oh, how did you get here? Did you drive? No, you took a train. Oh, what kind of train was that? Was it diesel or electric? Oh, what was that train made out of? Was that steel it was made out of? Oh, I see you're wearing clothes, shoes. Oh, what's that? Is that plastic in your shoes that I'm seeing there? All of that stuff is fossil fuel built. So how can you come out here and protest like that in your shoes like that? And so to which I do have an answer, which is, okay, so what you're telling me now is basically, until there's a perfect world when everything is fossil fuel free, I'm not allowed to ask for a better world. And I reserve the right to ask, even wearing a pair of leather shoes or plastic shoes or however it may be, to ask for a better world even if I'm not perfect yet, because the world around me isn't perfect, it's broken, and it's not allowing me to be perfect. And so should you. You should be able to ask for better and demand better even if you're not yourself perfect yet. And imagine if everybody used their impact multipliers and everybody made changes now, how quickly that would accelerate those social tipping points. And this is why it's so important, because of the tipping points, that we actually do local action. People feel change only on a local level. We don't really understand global warming. We understand local drought or local flood, or whether we have a local community-owned energy grid. Those are the things that we actually notice. So those are the things that we need to work on, and every other community likewise. So find your impact multiplier. Most of you in this audience are able to talk. So speak the truth wherever you're feeling able to do so. Bring it up in conversation. Be a nuisance. It's okay. I'm a constant nuisance to my friends, my workmates, my family, everybody, because I can just, you press a button and off I go. But if you're a parent, educate your children. If you're a teacher, educate the children. If you're in local government, do something there. If you're a builder, embed sustainable practices. If you're an engineer or designer, embed your sustainable practices, etc., etc. If you're a lawyer, there's so much you can do. Climate litigation is by far the biggest thing you can do, and individuals, a small number of individuals, can precipitate national level change. For example, the Surrey Hills fracking lawsuit was a big one of its kind, where this one person and her immediate surroundings have managed to basically change the law, because once they've established that fracking, when you give a permit for fracking, you have to not just factor in the carbon emissions of building the fracking site, but also the oil or gas that you're going to bring up from the ground, and whether that's in line with the Paris Agreement. They basically banned fracking across the whole of the country just by doing that. So that is actually a fantastic impact multiplier. It is also a great example of climate activism. And the good news is, a lot of people in this room are already parts of various different climate organizations, but for those of you who aren't, the great news is there's a fantastic ecosystem already out there. You don't need to invent the wheel, reinvent the wheel. You don't need to come up with anything. You just need to join one. And some of you might think that climate activism, or activism in general, isn't for everyone, and maybe not for you. Maybe you're worried that you're not cut out for that. But I'm here to tell you that there's so many different flavors, from completely vanilla to very spicy, and anywhere in between. So if you want something less contentious, more vanilla, try Friends of the Earth, the Green Party, Stop Ecocide, Climate Earth, which is litigation stuff. Or you can go a bit more contentious. You can go for Greenpeace, Extinction Rebellion, others. And then there's extra spicy stuff but I reckon those who are into the extra spicy stuff, they're already there. I'm not recruiting for them at all. Just Stop Oil. Just Stop Oil have just stopped because they have achieved a goal, which is to stop new oil and gas investment in this country. But Germany, Ende Gelände is another example of that. Actually, at the end of the talk, Alison is going to talk a little bit about the community activities that you can already get involved with here in Tunbridge Wells. So I would like to I represent Extinction Rebellion, but I invite you to participate and join something. It doesn't need to be XR, it could be anything. And we have a climate and nature fair in Tunbridge Wells in September, so Alison will talk about that later when I'm finished in a couple of moments. But there is stuff happening locally. You just need to show up and get involved. So, and if you do decide to join a movement, I just want you to know that there's so many things out there, and it doesn't all revolve around getting glued or locked onto roads or smashing windows. If it's not for you, that is absolutely fine. A lot of stuff can be done from the comfort of your own home, and a lot of stuff is not contentious at all and is not arrestable. I have just a few examples here. Somebody's doing sound engineering there, somebody's doing food and cooking, somebody's doing painting or block painting, music, drumming, stewarding. All of these things are great for the movement and are very much needed. So, and if you don't want to leave your house, you can still do something from your home. Ultimately, and we're coming to the end of this talk, we are still in a position for a choice for the world we want or the world we fear. The difference is us, so we need to make sure we do absolutely everything we can locally so that global change may occur as well. And remember, when it comes to the climate emergency, winning slowly is the same as losing. So if you're going to take action now. And I'm going to leave you with these 8 ideas, which I'd like you to take a picture of. There we are. The donut economics. It is possible to live within planetary means as well as meet everybody's needs. Number 2, finding your pack, both on a global level, thinking global, but also on a local level. Number 3, health before wealth. We need to think about quality of life, not standard of living. Acting with care, having empathy and having a sense of danger, but setting them to one side so that we can take action. Action before perfection. Multiplying your impact multipliers that you can find and use. Remembering that social tipping points come about fairly quickly and that we are the majority. With that, I would like to thank you for paying so close attention to me. And I really enjoyed being here, and I will continue to be here with you and answer your questions and have a chat with you. Thank you so much. Can you wait for the QR code?
That was great, wasn't it? Really good. We're going to go to questions now, and we've got a roving mic, so if you're quiet, we'll be able to hear you. Who already has a question for Bosch they'd like to ask? Got the guy in the check shirt behind him, there's the woman with the green thing. So we'll do those two first. Yeah.
20% is enough for the tipping point, and 89% of people are concerned about climate.
Yeah.
How do those two things work?
If 20% is enough for a tipping point and 89% of people are already worried, how come we've not tipped, right?
Thank you. And by the way, sorry, just before, I noticed there's a QR code there which is half off the page, and I really want you guys to get access to that QR code because it is where we get feedback on this talk. So I'm going to try and make it so that you can actually. Is that okay? There we go. So
Can I just add one more thing to that?
Okay.
My main concern at the moment is that compared to 10 years ago, I'm encountering more people who are anti doing something about climate change than 10 years ago. So I feel like the tipping point is going the wrong direction.
Very interesting. When you say encounter, if I may ask, is that encounter online or encounter face-to-face where they actually tell you this? Or is this a perception that you have?
Primarily online and in print media.
Okay, so it's not actually people that you're having these conversations with. And this is the problem with distorted both print and online media and social networks, is that they are pushing agendas which the silent majority don't necessarily agree with but don't speak out against. I think the challenge, and this is the worry for the climate movement, is that the people who are concerned, the 89%, the silent majority, they're concerned but don't feel, number one, they don't know that they're the majority, and number two, they don't feel empowered to precipitate change, which is why we're here tonight, so that people do.
It's also based on economics as well, because it's not the priority for a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely, but in terms of the ideology of how you justify not taking action, that varies widely, because on that point, when I'm out on protests, I notice who will engage with me. Because I usually end up being on the fringes of the protest with flyers and talking to people. I'm an outreach guy. I want to talk to people. I'm not just there to wave a banner and walk past. I want to engage. And so I do. And it's very typical. I can tell you who the demographics are who are least likely to engage with me. Care to make a guess?
Older people.
No. Older people are actually much more likely to engage with me. It is angry white men in suits. Okay, red face, you can imagine. And people of religious and ethnic minorities. So it's two ends of the spectrum. It's the people who don't want to hear it and the people who cannot afford to listen to it. And it is a fact that not everyone is ready for the message and not everybody is able to engage. But that doesn't mean they're not worried about it, and it doesn't mean they don't want action done about it. It's just that they personally don't necessarily feel able to take action. For example, protesting while being black is a problem. So I, as a white, male, middle-aged, middle-class person, I use that privilege to stand in the front lines because I know the police will treat me nicely. I've never been mistreated by the police, but I have watched people being mistreated by the same guys who didn't look like me. So I'm going to go out there and do it for them as well. What's our next point? Yes, madam.
Hi,
What's happened to the roving mic, by the way?
It's here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Nora. So I actually mentioned the Paris Agreement, and I was one of the negotiators for the Paris Agreement.
A hand of applause for this man.
I'm not going to take that because it's already working. But so yeah, as a government negotiator, I also worked for Greenpeace earlier in my career, and I want to say that just over the it's been over a decade now of just working in this space in different kind of ways. What I found is I wonder just what your view is on soil actually, because I found that we focus a lot on energy and agriculture and all these other aspects, but then soil, what I've discovered, is a blanket solution to a lot of our climate issues. So when it comes to mitigation, adaptation, water retention, human health, migration, food security, and I find that it's a blind spot at the moment when it comes to even activism and activists as well as governments. So and it's also something that's going extinct. So 49% of our soil is already gone. It takes 1,000 years to regenerate our soil. So without giving any doomsday, there is a very big and pressing issue that we, as stewards of this earth, should pass on to the next generation, at the very least healthy soil. So I can go on about this, but I'll just stop there. My other comment was on, and I also represent Safe Soil, which is a global initiative to bring about policy change, citizen awareness in democratic nations, especially because that's where you can really push governments. And also we work with farmers for over 25 years in India to transition to regenerative farming. But that's on soil. And then the other thing was when you mentioned your vision of the future, and a lot of it was about being centered and being happy and fulfilled, and how the earth is actually on fire. But my question, and I kind of challenge this, in the sense that the way we feel internally is a reflection of the way our external world is. So what is stopping us from actually looking within and having those things now? So being happy now and fulfilling ourselves now. And through 5 years ago, I discovered meditation and yoga. And that was a way for me, at least, to be able to at least tap into that fulfillment. That even though the world is going crazy, I can at least within myself, nothing is stopping me except myself, to be happy and joyful. And there's also another social movement for that, talking about tipping points, called Miracle of Mind, and it was an app launched last month, and it got more downloads than ChatGPT in 24 hours. So there is a very big movement towards at least getting people to do a very simple, close their eyes for 7 minutes, to be able to bring that centeredness now, and not wait until a world the world changes to do that. Why?
No.
I can do that now. I can close my eyes and do that now. So just
Thank you. I don't disagree with either one of those points. Thank you. If there's a round of applause, then please go ahead. So just as a caveat, I don't know everything about everything, and I'm very I'm very willing to say that. So I don't know a lot about soil. I'm not a soil scientist. I do know that regenerative agriculture is critically important, and I agree with that point. So it's a complex, interrelated system. Like, for example, when you mentioned climate migration, there's so many things that climate migration depends on what we do as humans, what governments do, what kind of, and this is my pet topic, so I could go on about this for a while. What kind of legislation is in place, what's the legal status of climate migrants, etc., and soil is part of that, because obviously you have to migrate away from a place where the soil won't sustain you, and then that generates problems downstream, conflict, war, blah blah blah. So it's all interlinked, and I don't doubt that soil is a critical piece in that puzzle. Number two, about happiness, I'm sure everybody has their own ways of feeling grounded. One of my ways of feeling grounded is being right here, right now, and there's no other place on the planet that I would rather be than here now, and I'm feeling great about that. I do running, that's my meditation, and everybody needs to be able to find their own. And I agree with you that we can be happy here and now, we can be grounded here and now, and when I say that's my vision, that is definitely a part of that. And I'm working on it. I'm working on me. I'm a work in progress. And that's a quote from a person I don't like. Anyone else with a comment or a question? Sir? Yes.
You touched on.
Would you like to borrow my mic?
You touched on the fact that governments do not reflect the will of the people, that we 89% are not being represented by the current Labour government. Could you offer any more ways that we can make that change and influence our current government? What about parallel parliaments, which are now being mooted?
Extinction Rebellion talks about a citizens' assembly, which I would imagine and I understand as an additional layer on top of what is an unrepresentative representative democracy. And the citizens' assembly, the concept behind that is it actually representative of the population, and it can work on any kind of issue, single issues or bigger things as well. In Ireland, we've had abortion and gay marriage legalized on the basis of citizens' assemblies, and we also had a citizens' assembly in the UK 2023 on the climate emergency. However, that did not have legal teeth. So that layer of democracy would only work if it actually is legally binding for the government. Now, what the government doesn't like to do is relinquish power, as we know very well. That's why they came into power, to exercise it. So who is this 100 randomly sortitioned people who are going to come and tell us what to do about anything, really? So that is the challenge. And I would say, no, I don't have the answer. But certainly local grassroots activism is the only thing, because you're going to have to change local governments, you're going to have to change your MPs, and you're eventually going to have to end up with some kind of green-colored government, because these guys, I don't know, I had such high hopes for the Labour Party based on the manifesto, and so I'm being daily sorely disappointed on not just one account, but multiple accounts, the latest one being immigration, which is just like, am I not welcome here anymore, being a Hungarian? Come on. I don't know. Sorry, I ramble, please. How are we doing? Any last questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I should be right out of the way. So I was just wondering, obviously ChatGPT was mentioned, and that's kind of one of the pressing issues being raised as to kind of both the consumptive nature of AI, but also the kind of cost of human welfare, the kind of potential help it can have versus the obvious kind of issues with it. So from a climate perspective, kind of with your expertise, what would you recommend as in is there a way to make it alignable with a climate-friendly vision, or is AI kind of the other way? Is it something that is a force for them that needs to be kind of counteracted as well?
It's so again, I don't know everything about everything, but if you think about the power consumption, as you mentioned, of large language models and just generally internet-based services, there's a lot of power being consumed. But that's not necessarily an issue at all, because there's a lot of power available to humankind by irradiation from the sun. If we just, like, if it was run on green power and it isn't hogging that green power from somebody else using it, because there's so much free or cheap electricity available, then in principle at least, that is not the problem. I have a very doomist view of artificial intelligence, as well as a very utopian view of it. We've been talking about universal basic income for a long, long time, and it has been trialed. It seems to work, but there is no political will, because it sounds like benefit scrounging for the masses. It is very, very counterintuitive. However, if AI were to take all the white-collar jobs in the next 10 years or so thereabouts, all of a sudden there would be a clamor for universal basic income, because people would not have a job to do. And if ChatGPT and the likes of them, and if the robots are taking over our jobs, and the robots are producing the GDP that is required for a country or for the globe to run, then universal basic income, in theory, can be made possible. So I'm not saying it is going to be messy, whichever way. It's not going to be a simple transition. It could mean the end of white-collar work, and that's it, misery. Or it could be the beginning of something that is more socialist in nature. The best, I grew up in what was called a socialist country, but it's basically a state socialism, which I wouldn't classify as properly socialist. It was an experiment that was failed. But it could lead us, and universal basic income and universal healthcare and universal everything that we require for the donut to work can be made a reality. I really struggle to visualize it, but it's not impossible. It could be one or the other, and with mess in the middle. Thank you. I think we're going to wrap up here. Gary has a point.
Boris, you mentioned the importance of litigation and how effective that is. How can all of us, or some of us, get involved in litigation? Do you have any idea about that?
Yes, so there are specific climate litigation law firms. So if you have an issue locally, it's a great thing to try and get involved with. Fracking, I mean, fracking doesn't happen everywhere, but where it happened, it was a great way of getting rid of it. But if you notice, I don't know, river pollution or air pollution, it is worth looking into, and it is an arduous process, and it takes years and years and years, and it requires funding, but it is highly effective as a method if that's what if that kind of person. Yeah, I can highly recommend it. Alison, is there anything else that you'd like to announce?
Just a little bit?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I've got my notebook here because I don't want to miss anyone out. So I wanted to let you know who the groups are that are involved in the Climate and Nature, Tunbridge Wells Climate and Nature Coalition: Green Party, Friends of the Earth, Extinction Rebellion, Tunbridge Wells Quaker Meeting, Greener Rust Hall, United Nations Association for Tunbridge Wells and Wealden, and we have an associate membership with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. Our primary focus is different, but we share values in common. I also want you to save the date. 13th of September, Calverley Grounds, we're having a Climate and Nature Fair. Please come along. We would love you to join any of these groups and think about what you might do. The situation is urgent, but our actions don't have to be extreme. They need to be relevant and powerful. So please stay, have a drink, have a chat, and let's come together and do something that humans do really well, and that is to come together in adversity. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. It's been a delight to meet you.